Hey everybody, it is the evening of October the 24th, 2024, and I want to give you a tropical update because a lot of things have changed over really the past day or so, and particularly pertaining to the Gulf of Mexico. So let's jump into this. Within the past couple of hours, the National Hurricane Center has designated Invest 92L. It's circled there in the orange. It's an area of thunderstorms that we're watching really closely because we think over the next couple of days something tropical could develop from this area of thunderstorms. And notice those really tall cloud tops, the oranges that are bursting up here in the past few scans. Those are those intense thunderstorms developing, and we're starting to see some counterclockwise flow indicating this is an area we need to pay very close attention to, and hence the designation of Invest 92L. So as we watch this system, we're already starting to see some signals that it could be a possible problem down the road, especially for parts of Florida. So here's what we know tonight. Low pressure is starting to form. We've already covered that much. But the trends are showing an increasing chance of a tropical system. That could mean a tropical depression. It could mean a tropical storm. It could even mean a hurricane. It's too early to know for certain what exactly is going to happen with this area that we're watching, but what we do know already is the timing looks to be some point next week. So most likely the system gets going, getting better organized on about Sunday or Monday, then intensifying midweek and ending up in Florida, bringing them a lot of rain by Thursday, perhaps a little bit later than that. So we're watching the timeline closely, seeing if that could change a little bit, but for now that seems to be what we're zoning in on. In terms of the impacts and where we think the greatest impacts will be felt from this eventual system, it's a little hard to tell at this time because we're still so far out, but this is sort of a general idea. In the red, that's where we think impacts primarily by the way of rain and possibly some wind are going to be most likely. So that includes Tampa Bay. Don't forget, that's a spot that has already been hard hit by Helene. It goes down to Cape Coral and Key West, also west of Miami into parts of central Florida. So that spot already saturated. A lot of the computer data, the models are pointing to this system, 92L, eventually impacting, moving inland across the west coast of the Florida Peninsula between Tampa, Cape Coral, and Miami. These tropical systems are big though, so that's why we think impacts are also possible in the yellow shaded area, central Florida, east. That includes Fort Lauderdale, points north of there. So in the red and in the yellow, those are the two spots where we think impacts are likely or possible. Further north, Jacksonville, even into the eastern part of Georgia and South Carolina along the coastline, that's where we want you to keep checking back to the forecast because it's still so early on here that we're not expecting a better idea and forecast confidence to increase until early next week. And just like it went with Helene, we know that things wobble and the forecast can change with very little notice. The good news is, as we approach next week, particularly Monday and beyond, confidence in what exactly will happen with 92L, including the strength, the intensity, and where it ends up, will start to increase. But this does look more than anything like a Florida type deal, which is great news for parts of the Florida Panhandle, also into parts of the Florida Big Bend. The impacts are probably going to be felt highest south of there with 92L. They just dealt with a lot with Helene, so this is more so going to be a Florida Peninsula type issue, but everything's still on the table. This is still early on, and things are subject to change. With that being said, I do want to dive into some of the model data, and remember, a computer model is just that. It's one idea of what could happen, but because there are a couple of them that are spitting out different solutions with intensity and with the strength and track, I want to show them to you, but also keep in mind this is more than likely going to change some in the next couple of days. What we're looking for now is trends in the model. Are we seeing the same thing happening with each model run, and what is it that's happening? So with the global forecast model, often referred to as a GFS model, what we've noticed is a gradual uptick in intensity over the past 24 to 48 hours with this system that we're watching in the Southwest Gulf. So that's a trend. We are trending upward in intensity. So far, track has stayed pretty much the same, which is the west coast of the Florida Peninsula. Of course, it's too early to narrow down any more specific than that, as you just saw. on our risk map there a moment ago. But let's go through the GFS together. This is Sunday afternoon, so this is now only a couple of days from now, and you're already starting to see a better organized system taking place in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, possibly a tropical depression on our hands by Tuesday, and then maybe a tropical storm, maybe something stronger than that as we approach midweek. So here's Tuesday night into Wednesday. You can see that Tampa Bay area, Point South, Cape Coral, heavy amounts of rain, the possibility of some strong winds, and it's too early to rule out storm surge, but that's still a ways off. When we start getting more specific with those numbers, we'll let you know. But again, the global forecast model, it's one of our models, is latching onto the idea of a stronger system making landfall as a tropical depression or a tropical storm, and again, not ruling out something stronger than that as we get towards the middle of the week, Wednesday into Thursday. Tampa South, Cape Coral, all spots that we need to pay attention to this one before it moves into the Atlantic, and forecast confidence decreases further after that. The next model I'm going to show you is our in-house model here. This is our Barron 15-kilometer model, and it actually shows a similar solution. So again, we're looking for those trends in the computer models, and when we start seeing them, it gives us a little more confidence. So what we're confident in now is that by Sunday afternoon into Monday, we think we're starting to see a little better organization with 92L to the point where we may have a tropical depression ongoing. Remember, the scale goes tropical depression, tropical storm, and then hurricane. So by Sunday afternoon, we may be dealing with a tropical depression and perhaps a tropical storm by early in the week. You can see it's looking a little better organized here by Tuesday. This is at 2 a.m. You can see not a real well-defined center, but certainly that has the look and the trademarks of what a weak tropical storm could look like, with maybe a little more intensification as we get towards Tuesday, midday into Wednesday. Regardless of what happens, what this makes landfall as, it's going to be a big rainmaker for Florida. In fact, we could be talking about pockets of 15 to 20 inches in an already saturated area from Helene. We're talking specifically Tampa Bay, but really anywhere in Florida that is south of the Big Bend and across much of the peninsula, both the east and west coast, this could be a big rainmaker. In terms of the environment that we're looking at, because now we've talked about the system itself, where we think some of the impacts could be, and we looked at some of the models, I want to show you what our environment will look like in the next couple of days. And so as you look here at the screen, anything that you see in yellow, that's an unfavorable environment for a tropical system to form. The orange is a little better, and the red is a very favorable environment. So by Sunday and into Monday, we're starting to see a very favorable environment across the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, which means low wind shear, very warm waters, and a couple of other elements that we're watching. That same general idea continues into Monday and even into Tuesday out ahead of this system. So it'll be a favorable environment leading up to any potential landfall, especially across southwest Florida, the Cape Coral area, but even up to Tampa, things still look fairly favorable. I would say the further south this storm goes, the stronger it may get. That's just where the favorable and the most conducive conditions are, but that too is not completely locked in stone yet. So that's what we have going on in the tropical Gulf of Mexico. A lot of rain with Florida, no matter what happens, and then just to emphasize, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to exactly how strong this system gets, but we have some confidence and better confidence that this will be impacting the Florida Peninsula, particularly the Tampa Bay area, southwest Florida, even into the east coast of the Florida Peninsula on the Atlantic side. Of course, because we're still a few days out, that's subject to change as well. But here's a preliminary look at rainfall totals. This is from the Weather Prediction Center. And you can see a bullseye south of Tampa across southwest Florida, possibly of 6 to 7 inches of rainfall, isolated amounts up to 10 to 15. And we even said earlier on, can't rule out a 20-inch rainfall in a few spots. That could change here in the next few days, and the details will continue to be fine-tuned and ironed out, but the take-home message here is that a lot of rain is possible across a wide area in Florida, in the peninsula. Look at the Big Bend of Florida, not much rain there. The Panhandle of Florida, little to no rain expected, which again is great news because those are some of the spots that were hardest hit by Helene. So that's what we know tonight when it comes to what's happening in the Gulf of Mexico. The big change here today has been, number one, the National Hurricane Center has designated this now Invest 92L, with the thunderstorm development increasing the odds as well of development up to 70%. And by the way, it's sort of interesting to note, this area of disturbed weather actually originated out on the Pacific side near Mexico and then crossed over in the Atlantic and is now getting better organized. It doesn't happen very often, but it does sometimes happen, and it's been a fascinating part of watching this process evolve. The tropics as a whole still remain very busy. So this is Category 4 Hurricane Kirk. And the good news about Kirk, it is a fish storm, meaning it's no direct threat to any landmass at this point, at least at the strength that it's in. But still a very strong storm, Category 4. That is at the top end of the scale. You'll remember Helene made landfall as a 4. Kirk right now has pressure down to 943 millibars with winds of 130 miles per hour, gusting up to 160 miles per hour. It's a very strong storm. It looks like it may be trying to go through what we call an eye wall replacement cycle. That's sort of where we see one eye wall collapsing in on itself and then getting, to put it in Layton's terms, and then getting another eye wall forming. And sometimes when we come out of an eye wall replacement cycle, it can mean the system gets a little bit stronger. So that will be something to watch. But the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center with Kirk still calling for a Category 4 storm at least through Saturday morning. It's a major hurricane by Saturday afternoon with winds of 125 miles per hour. Again, it's a fish storm, no impact to land. This will send swells, though, as far west as Puerto Rico, perhaps the east coast of Florida, and then into the Carolinas. Eventually, the further north this hurricane gets, the weaker it will get as it runs into some very cold water, but there is a very real possibility this could be impacting the UK by Wednesday afternoon. Sort of crazy to think about, right? More than likely as a subtropical storm, a post-tropical cyclone, lost many of its tropical characteristics, but Paris, London could see rain out of this by Wednesday. So that's sort of crazy to think this is how far this system could travel. There's another system that we're watching out there. This is Tropical Storm Leslie, and it doesn't obviously look quite as intense as Kirk. It's still a tropical storm, but there's convection and thunderstorm activity that is ongoing here tonight with Leslie. And believe it or not, this is pretty interesting to think about considering how far east Leslie is, but it is expected to strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane by tomorrow, and then sort of track close to where Kirk was. Now, of course, Kirk is going to mix up some of the waters out there. That'll make it harder for Leslie to strengthen, but still expecting it to maintain at least hurricane status as we get into Wednesday afternoon of next week, still at that status. So there's a lot going on in the tropics. Obviously, the big information tonight is the designation of Invest 92L. I'm going to keep you updated all week long as we continue to learn more about this system, its eventual path, as we really narrow it down, and then some of the strength, too, that this system may bring. And more than likely, this will be named, if it becomes a named storm, Milton. So that's something that we're already thinking about as well. Thanks so much for joining tonight. I'm going to have another video coming up here later on that we're going to be talking more about everything happening in the tropics, including 92L.